I'm sorry? Yes, and we'll have updates from Daphne and Lucinda. So, do we have a quorum? We don't. So let's start with Amy Peterson. At our last board meeting, we introduced members to our new director of New York City's Mayor's Office of Workforce Development, Amy Peterson. And she's going to provide a brief overview of the workforce development opportunities the city is looking at related to Amazon's new headquarters in Long Island City. I'll turn it over to Amy.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here and see all of you again. I'm entering my, I don't know how many months now, a few months, and really trying to both understand all of the workforce stuff that's happening across the city and how to make it work better and connect it more. And we've really been focusing on kind of a trades pipeline with construction and maintenance and green jobs, a healthcare pipeline, and the tech. And so, as everyone knows, it was announced about a month ago, I think now, that the city and Virginia were the selected locations for Amazon. And I'm not the expert on it, but I'm learning some of this now, and probably you've read a lot. I would say a couple of things about Long Island City and the things that have happened there and the selection of Amazon, and then really about the promise, I think, that exists in bringing them here in workforce. So, you know, the long plan for Long Island City has always been about diversifying the economy. And there's been a huge push for residential, certainly, and huge growth there. And so bringing Amazon there will certainly balance out that a little bit. And it's something that, you know, in terms of the thinking about Long Island City for a long time, has been to have both industry and residential there. And there's a Long Island City plan with a lot of investment in infrastructure and a lot of things that made it the right selection in the right place. The process that occurred both on the city side and the Amazon side was very close to a select group of people. So the people, and I've had the opportunity to meet a few people from Amazon to talk about workforce opportunities, and they're just, you know, it was a very close held secret there. So they're just starting to figure out what they're doing and how that's going to look. But there were a number of commitments that were made as part of the original MOU. One was an investment by the city, the state, and Amazon, and $5 million each in initial funding, really thinking about the tech jobs and trying to understand how to get New Yorkers, as it's been repeated quite often, Queensbridge is the largest public housing development in the country, and it's a few blocks away from Amazon. So how do you ensure that the people who live in the community can take advantage of that and what that looks like? The commitment by Amazon is for 25,000 jobs. It could be even larger than that. And the Amazon's already in New York City. They have different presences, including a new Staten Island fulfillment center and tech jobs already. They're already working with our tech talent pipeline in some aspects. So they will be in the One Port Square building sooner than their new campus. So they're going to be making their presence known here pretty quickly. They are committed to really thinking about workforce, and I think it's a good opportunity for us to show, you know, I would say part of the reason they came here was because obviously people are here and workers are here and the tech is here, but also there's just this amazing group of people who care about workforce and care about workforce development. And I know they met some of them during the process, including, I think, LaGuardia Community College. So they have already met with the tenant leaders in NYCHA and Bishop Taylor and a group of people in the community. We've already sat down with them to really talk about what the pathways are for both construction jobs, for the building maintenance and construction and other jobs that it will take to operate this facility, About half of the 25,000 jobs are expected to be non-tech jobs, so about creating a pathway for that, working within the Workforce One system to try to develop a process, and then certainly the tech pipeline and how do you make that available to people who are uni students, but how do you help people get to that stage, and how do you integrate that? And there's a lot of work that's already been done on the ground by the city and all of its partners, and so we're hoping to build off of that with them.
Who's going to administer the $15 million in workforce funding?
I don't think that's been decided yet, so it's all in discussions. And there is an employment center that's meant to be on the site, and we're still trying to get more details about that.
Have you run by Amazon?
Well, it's on their facility, and I think they're going to have a partnership with them to do that.
What kinds of jobs do you expect will be available? I mean, are we talking about corporate, or are we doing, what are the jobs?
Yeah, so it is certainly a corporate headquarters, so this is part of the, and you can believe or be skeptical, I believe, because I, whatever, optimistic. They're just starting to get all their HR people even involved in really thinking this out because it's been so held so closely, but it is meant to be a headquarters. So it will be half of it engineering jobs, and then the other half will be everything that would be required to be in a headquarters. So it'll be all of the legal and HR and admin type positions, and also the building maintenance and all of those types of positions. So the whole thing. It's not what exists in Staten Island, and then there's something that I heard the name yesterday, but I don't remember what it was, for their kind of, they have their fulfillment center, but then they have some other kind of middle range distribution thing that there's one in Queens already, so it's not those types of positions.
And
Yeah.
what's the timeline for this?
So the move into Court Square will be within the next year. They're going to start to do that, and then they have a very aggressive timeline. As you probably read, this will go through the state's GPP process, so they'd love to, I think, be in construction, within a year and a half. That seems aggressive to anyone who's trying to build something major in New York City. So, but they're really looking to advance this quickly.
And the workforce efforts will start
Right now. So we've already had both discussions with them just to get to know them. And they do have some stuff that they've done. They have a program called Career Choice that if you Google it, is something they do in their fulfillment centers where they help their workers actually partner with other employers to advance past kind of warehouse positions into other careers, and they support their workers. They also have an apprenticeship program. So they have some things that they already do, and so, but we'll be working with them closely.
Just, I don't mean to interrupt, but could everyone remember to use the microphones for the recordings? Yeah. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
No, at some point it would be great if we could get them to make a presentation to us.
Agreed.
With their planning.
We are aware that these romantically named fulfillment centers have a lot of problems with the way they've handled workers. One is on strike in Minnesota. There's all kinds of lawsuits in Boston. A number of my friends are out watching every day in the fulfillment center of Staten Island. The average wage was only a few months ago $13, now it's $15. So the promises of Amazon have to be taken within the context of let's watch it, let's see. I'm glad they're coming because any chance at middle wage jobs is exciting. It puts New York where it should be, in the middle of the tech changes that are going to happen. But I've thought for many a year that Jeff Bezos is the most dangerous man in America. You go to the Staten Island Center and you see the benches stretching on almost to Jersey, passing the whole body of water. So people boxing. And at the edge of those is a very large man with orange hair banging a drum to keep the rhythm of the boxing. And going down the aisle are these Star War-like soldiers zapping people who might not be bouncing fast enough or nodding, including one woman who was nodding and got zapped, who only 2 months ago was making $84,000 in Saks selling a coat, is now boxing the same coat at $15.34 an hour. So this is the problem we face.
I don't know if I have a response to that. You're looking at me. I hear you. Yes, I hear you.
The stunning number that's been thrown out with the Amazon jobs is the average wage of $150,000 a year. So now that includes Jeff Bezos' salary. We can understand how the math could work, but I'm just curious whether there's anything more detailed than just that overall average.
Do they say that's the salary? Because a
Yeah,
lot of
yes.
times, okay, a lot of times they throw in the cost of benefits and all of that when they calculate it.
Yeah, I
Don't know.
I think we've all asked the same question.
Ask it.
That is a question.
Remains a question. All right.
Yes.
Okay, were there any more questions?
So I guess, next time we meet in March, what's your sense? You'll know a lot more. Can we get an update?
Yes, of course, yes. I think our hope, and just to kind of comment on what Joe said, my initial thoughts about Amazon were certainly not positive. However, I think in terms of diversifying our economy, which is what we want to happen, it's really important. And so now is our opportunity to help them shape this place and to do it in partnership with them and to get the people that we care about into those jobs and to potentially impact how they are doing their work in Staten Island and other places. And I think that that's something they're already kind of feeling and coming to New York City and what that's like. Where we will definitely be able to come back and present in March.
Yes.
Because in addition to
Could you use your microphone?
yeah, absolutely. In addition to getting details back on Amazon's integration in New York, there have been a lot of reports not only about Amazon recently in terms of the way that they treat some of their workers, but also some of their partner organizations, their affiliates. There was recently a pretty disturbing report about how a number of women were treated that worked with one of Amazon's affiliates. And in the same way that Apple has begun to report on some of their manufacturing partners overseas in terms of how it fits into their supply chain in terms of ethics and human rights and fair wages, it may also be prudent for us to ask Amazon to report on perhaps the impact of how this is going to affect some of their other relationships in the area as well. Sometimes them coming here, there's an entire economy created around companies, and so broadening the scope of that inquiry, I think, will be helpful as well.
I just had one other question. Curtis is here representing CUNY. Have there been any discussions with CUNY on the Amazon, as far as you know?
Yeah, Andrew was involved in helping with the bid, and so is John as well. And there's a lot of discussion about how to work forward. I mean, I think over the last few years we've done a good job of building up some pilots in the tech area, which we really hope this can help bring it to scale now. Now is the time to bring some of our coding programs and other technology programs that we've done with the support of many people in this room, and I do think that there's an opportunity to scale. And there's definitely conversations happening at LaGuardia as well. Ken Adams, or I thought a good op-ed, who's Cranes, who's the Dean of Workforce at BCC, so has some good ideas. So yes, there's some, but as we talked about, there's not a lot of details at this point.
So we look forward to hearing more about this at the next board meeting. I'm sure this will be a topic that we'll address for most of our board meetings until they open up their new headquarters in a few years. We'll move on and get an update on adult programs from Deputy Commissioner Lucinda Glover, who's here from the Department of Small Business Services.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'll be fairly quick given we're running a little behind time. The Workforce One Centre contracts, which I provided an update on at the last meeting, are still going through the various approval processes within the city. But all of the vendors are working and fully operating the centres. I've pulled together the 3 vendors for a system-wide meeting 2 weeks ago. This is the first of a quarterly series of meetings that I'll have with them. And this meeting was really to focus on collaboration. So given we have 3 different vendors running the Workforce One system, making sure that we do everything we can to get them operating as one team. We have our media team has put together some new materials for our Workforce One centres. So these are on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. So please share them amongst your networks. This is an image here on the right. This is a video about our Priority One program. I won't play it, but it's very quick and easy to find on YouTube if you just Google Priority One NYC. We have been making use of the Link NYC stations, if that's what they're called. I think there's about 1,700 across the city that have been running ads for our Workforce One system. We've also been advertising on bus shelters as well, so really getting out across New York City. There's been at least one in each zip code where we have a Workforce One centre. And they're just all of our handles. Again, appreciate any support out in social media. A few training updates. ESL Bridge to Medical Assistant program. We've had 2 cohorts delivered in partnership with LaGuardia and the Washington Heights Workforce One Centre. We had 41 enrolled in the first quarter and 37 have completed and started occupational training. As part of our Web Development Fellowship program, we've had 2 cohorts graduate, one in December 2017 where we now have 29 of 37 graduates working with an average salary of $89,890. The second cohort has 13 of 35 graduates now working with an average salary of $88,000. They completed in July 2018 and we are providing various forms of support to try and increase that number of people who are now working. So that includes doing business development and asking the vendor who provided who ran the Full Stack Academy to do ongoing work in terms of career coaching, Slack channel support, and employer events and job fairs connecting employers to graduates. And that's it.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. We're now going to hear some updates on the WIOA youth programs from Assistant Commissioner Daphne Montanas from the Department of Youth and Community Development.
Good morning. So in terms of our WIOA programs, both the Train and Earn and Learn and Earn, or formerly OSY and ISY programs are well underway for this program year. This year, we will serve 1,186 youth in our Train and Earn program, and 1,056 young people will be engaged in our Learn and Earn program this program year. Learn and Earn is wrapping up its pilot year of New York City's STEP, which launched this past spring and is a partnership with New York City Service. Through this pilot, 96 youth from 5 Learn and Earn providers, or CBOs, and 101 mentors from corporate partners in real estate and financial industries engaged in 5 sessions that included speed mentoring, career exploration activities, a summer service project, and a culmination ceremony. Feedback from this year's program has been so positive that we're looking to expand the New York City STEP program again next year to reach a new group of mentors and mentees. And New York City STEP was created to help students in our Learn and Earn program access mentors in the field of their interest, and also to help fill the gap between high-impact, one-day mentoring events and sustained commitment of traditional mentoring. In terms of SYEP, DYCD is pleased to share that on November 2nd, we released 3 RFPs for the Summer Youth Employment Program. And they include the school-based SYEP, special initiatives, and community-based SYEP program. The school-based SYEP model is designed to strengthen the connection between academic learning and the summer career exploration for young people. In this model, select public high schools from the DOE and our SYEP contractors will implement both school year and summer program components, with school leadership playing a key role in the implementation of the program at their schools. Special Initiatives RFP is comprised of 4 service options designed to expand access to SYEP to different youth populations, including vulnerable youth, an expansion of the existing model, youth who reside in NYCHA developments, and youth who participate in sector-focused training throughout the school year. Our community-based SYEP service options will serve youth ages 14 through 21 throughout New York City. The RFP will target youth ages 14 and 15, older youth ages 16 to 21, and then our Letters for Leaders option. In all of the SYEP RFPs, all 3, younger youth ages 14 and 15 will participate in project-based or service learning projects that closely match their interests, and older youth ages 16 through 24 will be placed in work-based experiences. Proposals for the community-based and special initiatives RFP are due this coming Monday, December 10th, and December 17th for the school-based SYEP RFP. We held 3 pre-proposal conferences on November 19th and 20th, and webinars on the project-based experiences this past Friday, November 30th, and materials from all of these events are currently available on our website.
Does anyone have any questions? No, thank you. That all sounds very interesting, Bethany. Okay, we're now going to turn to our gig workers update. So at our October meeting, we announced that we plan to launch a training pilot for gig workers that would start in late October. Today we have representatives from the Sama School. Hi, how are you? Who are going to update us on the progress of the first cohort. And of course, I wanted to remind the board that our board member, Joe McDermott, and his organization, the Consortium for Worker Education, generously provided the financial support for this pilot. So thank you again, Joe. And I will now turn it over to Chris Neal, Therese Workman, and Jennifer Curry from the Sama School to update us on the pilot.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you so much for the invitation to come and speak to you and present on how the pilot is going. Again, my name is Therese Workman. It's a very fortunate last name to work in this field. It's a lot to live up to. That's me. That's the crew. Basically, what you're going to see in this presentation is, and here in this presentation, is that the pilot's going well. Everyone involved really found value in it. And the next step is bringing this to more than 9 people. We had some challenges there. But I'm going to quickly run through some of the major learnings that we took away, and actually you'll have an opportunity to hear from one of the participants herself. So let's begin here. So for those of you who don't know Sama School or need a refresher, we are in the business of showing job seekers, or actually current entrepreneurs, basically exposing them to the world of independent work, or how to leverage, the future of work and apps and the internet to level up your career, or add this new skill set to your toolbox. As you might know, this type of work is quickly accelerating, and so we want to make sure that the most vulnerable people aren't left behind. So what we recognize, of course, in New York is that, for gig work, for independent work, it's easy to get started. It's easy to get up and running and get connected to work on your own time and test out new career paths. But of course, there's a lot of cons when it comes to gig work. We don't have the protections for independent workers that we need. We're working on it, right? We're working on it every day. And of course, that leads to income volatility. How do you connect to work if you don't have a smartphone? So basically, our course wanted to address that and raise all of these sort of pros and cons. And we recognize that independent work is not for everyone. But in case everything goes wrong, you lose your full-time job or access to benefits, how are you going to pay the light bill tomorrow, right? So our offering, what do? We train. We support after all of our trainings. We provide, unending support, individualized support to all of our students. And we also provide resources, including contract templates and blogs and now chat rooms and constant wraparound support to help people really help their careers blossom. So launching writing, this was the front page of the course. This is one of our students. So our course that we developed specifically for domestic workers was called Using the Internet to Increase Your Income as a Domestic Worker. And of course, we invited domestic workers who are making, I think it was $600 or less a week, specifically for this pilot. We teamed up with some independent worker organizations, some of our current training providers, and other cooperatives, and posted on social media and tried to get the word out as best we could. I think we mentioned that we started promoting in September, and we learned a lot from that whole process and how we can improve on that to get the word out better and to get more people into this training. Like you heard before, it was over 2 evenings at CWE's offices in Lower Manhattan. We had 31 people register. A few of those dropped off, 22 to be exact. It was kind of like, all the computers were on, and it was disappointing, to say the least. But the 9 attendees had overwhelmingly positive feedback. And actually, I think it's been 5 weeks since the training, and we've heard back that one person started independent work. Could be more. We're still trying to get in touch with 3 of our enrollees. So again, the NPS sort of speaks for itself. 100% of our participants recommend that others should take this training. In their own words, some feedback that got me really excited was, and you'll see the theme is just exposure, like knowing that this exists, and that, we mentioned that the title of the course was Using the Internet to Increase Your Income, and that actually turned out to be more than what we thought. As you'll hear from in a video that I'll show you soon, using the internet could also mean becoming comfortable with finding other resources on the internet. For example, we have a student who will tell you that she's now looking at other workshops that she sees on social media and wants to take advantage of those so that she can deepen her skill base. So it's like a lot of what we talked about in class, because I was there teaching it, was just actually getting into the mindset of being a freelancer and being an entrepreneur, and also not being afraid of the internet if you have all the skills to access and to gauge what's a scam, what's a safe contract to enter into. And then again, one of our stats, how interested are you in pursuing independent work after taking our course? 100% were at least somewhat interested, and most were extremely interested. Again, we've been in touch with 6 out of 9 in the past 5 weeks, and one trainee has been trying this work. So what I'd like to do is actually introduce you to Kay. She was one of our participants, and we had the chance to speak with her, I think it was 3 weeks after the training, and so wanted to show you a clip of that footage in her own words.
My name is Kay Bobel, and I'm a professional nanny. It took me a while to get there. I've done everything else under the sun, but children really are my passion. So I did the Summer School course workshop for domestic workers using the internet to generate income. Doing this summer school course made me realize that the sky is the limit. I am not limited by how I can produce an income for myself. There are many platforms. I have lots of skills that I never even thought about using before. And being exposed to independent work or being a freelancer has shown me that I don't have to be in a box as far as generating an income. I am now actually considering independent work. We get so brainwashed into thinking that we must work for other people, and I've done that for decades now. And being unemployed, because I am presently unemployed, as in not having an employer, I was available to take this workshop, and it really opened me up to the possibilities that are there. I never really considered completely working for myself or doing other things for myself. My instructor's name was Therese, and she was so engaging. She was awesome the way she connected with each person in the workshop, and it made me think a little bit about myself, because I was trained through the NDWA and Cornell Workers Institute to conduct workshops in social emotional child development. And I saw some of myself in Therese, the way she didn't just stand and talk at us. She led the conversation. Everyone was so willing to participate. That's what people learn when you engage them. And that is actually another pathway for me to generate income in conducting these classes for fellow nannies, even parents as well. So for me, now that I've been exposed, I've not had an employer for almost 6 months. And I love the idea of setting my own schedule, being my own boss. But I also know that I need to work with children. So since I did this course, I've actually considered doing other workshops where I can be an independent contractor, where I don't necessarily have to go and report to one particular family, Monday through Friday from 9 to 5, but where I can offer my services, even as far as teaching classes, just so that I can do what I know that I should be doing, which is working with children. I discovered this workshop. I'd seen a friend of mine post about it, and I never really thought about it. But after doing the workshop, I realized, oh, I could take this class, and I can offer this and generate an income for myself by offering classes to young children if I take this Zumbini class that I never had heard of before. But it's a movement class, and it's drama and dancing and reading, all of the things that I love. So now, summer school, sitting for those 2 days with my facilitator and other colleagues made me realize that there is so much more. Having my own business has led me to the point where I am truly believing in me, in Kay. I love it. I never thought in a million years I would be an entrepreneur, but I am an entrepreneur today, and being involved in the summer school program has made me think of other ways in which I can continue my entrepreneurship. So if you know that you have a service, whether it's cleaning houses, taking care of children, if you like organizing, go for it. Don't be limited by your mind. Don't let your fear control you. They say fear is false evidence appearing real. Don't let fear control you. Just grab it by the horns and go for it.
Thank you. Next. She taught me a lot. I was like, oh, fear. It's evidence appearing real. So, as you can see, that this was a, overall, everyone felt really excited. And, she mentions fear and of course, in the class we teach about, trust and safety. So the idea that from this process, she's saying, recognize your fear. It's different from being able to vet scams and things like that. Recognize your fear, get the information, educate yourself, and then leverage what you're learning to drive whatever dream you have. So that was the general takeaway that I got from the entire cohort as well. Let me get back out of here. Great, so we're gonna continue the pilot, of course, and I think what our next steps are going to be are to continue to collaborate with our CBOs and independent worker organizations. We'd like to invite the participants themselves, if they, since they really think this would be a great training, tell your friends and other people in your network. Again, we're going to drive hopefully more promotion on social media, and we'd like to experiment with maybe, the class time wasn't ideal for some people to make it. We recognized that it was that prime time, evening time, so maybe that was the exact worst time for a lot of men. So we're going to be, speaking directly to the people who this would serve to get their preferences on class time and length. And yeah, so I invite anyone to ask any questions about the training. I also have some statistics. They're still coming together, so I'm happy to send those along when they're all finalized as well.
Yes. So I realized, I realized that I was confused about something. So the women that were targeted were like former or current domestic workers?
Yes.
Okay. And then I guess what I was curious about as she was talking was this definition of independent work. So is it just sort of that you were trying, because like obviously they, in my frame of reference, they were already doing independent work, right? So are you just trying to kind of give them like a broader spectrum of like what all the different ways?
Yes, and so it's exactly right. So a lot of these women were already doing this kind of work, but I think that it was more like, did you know that you could connect to more clients? Did you know that you can do market research to find out if you're getting paid enough? And there's with Kay in particular, she actually also sells jewelry on the side. And so instead of calling it on the side, how can you professionalize that and see this as one of the ways that I'm an entrepreneur? So a lot of it again was exposure. We also make sure, we take a check of like, how are you communicating with your employer? When you meet someone new, how do you talk about your services? Do you have an idea of what your personal brand is? What makes you a special nanny? In your case, are you teaching Zumbini, right? Are you someone who comes from the arts? We had one participant who was, in the conversation we found out she had been a praise dancer, a spoken word artist, and all these different things that she didn't realize set her apart from someone else. And so a lot of that was just exposure and professionalizing a lot of skills as well. Yeah.
A number of the gig platforms and the social media platforms, if someone's creating their profile, they kind of have like a percentage of how complete your profile is.
Right.
So the more information you give them, of course they want it for advertising purposes, but there's also this assumption that the more complete your profile is, the more followers you'll get, or the more clients you'll potentially get from the gig platform. So I'm wondering, how are you kind of advising them on how they should complete their profiles? Like, how do they know what an effective profile is like versus an ineffective profile? And I'm not just asking from the standpoint of how many clients they get. I mean, a number of us also do training with our own clients and members, basic computer training. So I'm wondering if you come up with a way of measuring how effective that is in terms of how that relates back to the training?
That's a great question. So I think right now we haven't been capturing metrics on profile completion versus, per platform. I think overall, basically what we come from is to have a solid profile, you need to have a professional picture, right? Not your favorite selfie, one where you're smiling, making eye contact, neutral background, and the about me and how you communicate your services is really important. So we've actually developed tools, an about me generator for people who might not be as skilled at talking about themselves or not confident in their English. So it actually, you type it in like Mad Libs and it generates a really nice narrative about yourself, and also proposal generators and things like that. But in terms of the profile completion, we make sure to check with each student, like have you chosen a platform? Let's take a look at your profile. Let's upload that profile picture. Here's your about me, and make sure you're adding any other skills, because we want to make sure that you're being sent jobs that are matched to your preferences. So in that way, individualized support, it's really like, let's look at your specific profile, because many of these students chose different platforms as well. So a complete profile on Urban Sitter might look something different from a complete profile on Handy or a complete profile on all these other platforms. But during our training, we did make sure to only steer people to the tried and true platforms, and measured how finished their profiles were per person. If that answered the question.
Are we tracking if this training will result in either larger incomes, larger weekly wages, or at least like better quality of work? How are we tracking that?
Yes, so we are going to be disseminating the 1 month survey, 3 month, and 6 month, I believe, is what we're doing for this pilot. And our impact team is collecting all those different items that you were speaking about to capture how much have you started working, how much have you been working, what is the pay increase, if at all. So yes, we'll be able to share that data when it comes in.
Maybe just to jump in here and underscore a couple of points. If the members will recall, we had structured this in a way that we were going to do 2 cohorts, right? We were going to do 1 cohort to test the idea, the efficacy of the curriculum and the approach with domestic workers, and targeted to people who didn't necessarily have any language barriers. And then we were going to shift to cohort number 2, because we know that there are many, many immigrants who are domestic workers, and some percentage of those, language is a barrier for them. And I think, we didn't quite get the number of people that we wanted in the first cohort, and I think we're working with Sound School to explore how we might try to get a bigger group before we move on to addressing the language barrier, and we appreciate their flexibility on that point. And we also are trying to figure out, as Therese said, how to think more strategically about recruitment. And I would be remiss, I think, if I didn't mention that we have a number of folks here today from the National Domestic Workers Alliance. And we'll be hearing a presentation a little bit later from Palak Shah. But we have been talking to them extensively, and we're exploring the possibility of a stronger partnership potentially for the next round, because we know we have to find a way to really tap into the domestic workers that are out there, and an organization like NDWA clearly has members, they have a lot of credibility, and we're trying to figure out if we can make something work there. So I just wanted to point out and underscore those couple of things.
Thank you so much. Okay, we are going to now get an update on the survey that was conducted at with the Workforce One customers. So again, at our October board meeting, Board Vice Chair Mark Alia described a survey of Workforce One customers that his organization, Economic Mobility Corporation, SBS, and the board staff helped implement. And Chris Neal is going to give us an update on that survey.
So just a very brief update. We don't have the final results, We did do a survey of, we worked very closely with the Department of Small Business Services, who were extremely helpful in working with the 5 hub centers, the big centers in each of the 5 boroughs, to pose a survey to all new customers over a 2-week period in late September. The issue that we're still grappling with is really figuring out what the response rate was, and because we think there may be some people that we shouldn't be counting in the overall denominator that would sort of bring the response rate up, and just know that we're still trying to troubleshoot on some of the data, but we will hopefully be able to figure out some of those kinks very soon, and then Mark and his team can look forward to figuring out what trends there are among the folks that took the survey and what their responses were. Mark, I don't know if there's anything you would add to that.
No, we're ready to go.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to take a break in our agenda and just turn to some board business. We have meeting minutes from our October meeting that the board needs to vote on, which is in section 1 of your board book. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. For our second order of business, there's a resolution for the board's consideration. The New York City Department of Youth and Community Development seeks to transfer more than $630,000 from the youth administrative funds to the youth program funds. I'm going to turn it over to Chris Neal from board staff to walk you through the resolution, and that can be found in section 1 of the book.
So we have a new kind of resolution for the full board to consider. Normally, we have an executive committee comprised of 7 members that meets quarterly, like the full board, and they consider budget proposals. They review and approve the budgets for both the adult side of the equation and the youth side from SBS and DYCD, respectively. There is a new policy. There's a new policy that the New York State Department of Labor has set out that in order to approve any funding transfers, which I'll explain in just a second, the full board needs to vote and approve or disapprove any such transfers. And this number is not accurate, it's not 200 million. If only, right, Daphne? So transfers can happen in a couple of ways. Transfers can be between our adult and our dislocated worker buckets, right? Adults are for anybody 18 years of age or older. Dislocated workers are generally a subset of that, people who have somehow been dislocated from their current work. And then there's also this element of administrative versus program, which is really what we're talking about today. So in the context of youth, and across really all the funding categories, it's standard for local areas to have up to 10% of the funding that they get to spend on administrative costs. And these are all the non-direct program-related expenses that are needed to administer these programs, right? And the New York City Department of Labor simply just drops 10% into admin for every local area. All 33 across the state is pretty standard. 10% is not usually enough even to administer these programs. So they just sort of do that automatically. Now what we have today, the proposition is great because DYCD is proposing to shift some of their funding from administrative into program, meaning we can serve more young people with the program dollars. Now, my understanding is that DYCD shifted some of its IT staff to other funding sources like city tax levy, thereby freeing up the $600,000 plus of admin. So since they don't need to use it on the IT, they propose to move it over to the program funds and serve more young people. So you can see the current allocation, and these figures are rounded, The current youth allocation is just a hair over $20 million for the current fiscal year. And then of that 2 million, 10% is for administrative, and 90% or 18 million is for program. And so the proposal is to move 600,000 out of admin into program, and the resulting allocation would be 18.6 million program and just 1.4 in administrative funds. Are there any questions or comments about that?
I just have a question, DYCD, around, around the status of SYEP having some technology solutions around electronic timesheets and some of the application systems. So CUNY we're going to work on a new DYCD SYEP allocation. I know we're looking at doing lots of manual entry because we don't have, there's some technology issues around uploading applications that we're going to have to type in by hand, which is going to add up to about 9 weeks of manual entry. So just want to know how, if this money could think about some of the administrative manual entry pieces of SYEP possibly could be used for some of those.
So this is strictly for LDOA programming, the out-of-school youth and in-school youth programming. SYEP, for the large part, is funded through city tax levy funding, and our system, the YEP system, is something that we're continually looking at enhancements, obviously for the new RFP and the new models that we're putting forth. There will be some enhancements. But we can talk offline about additional supports and ideas that you may have from a community standpoint. But this is separate and apart from that funding.
Any other questions? So there is a resolution that Marie's pointing to that we'd like the board to consider.
Do we have a motion to pass the resolution? Second? All in favor?
Right.
I think it's passed.
Thank you.
All right, that's it for the board business. We're now going to continue with the theme of independent or gig workers, and specifically of domestic workers. You may have heard about the concept of portable benefits. Benefits that are available to independent workers that are not dependent on one specific employer, but instead are portable across all employers or gigs. The National Domestic Workers Alliance, who we had present at our June board meeting earlier this year, has developed a platform for portable benefits, and they're going to provide a demo of that platform today. So please welcome Palak Shah.
Good morning. Good morning. We had a really early morning, 6:30 shuttle from Boston. Thank you for having us here back again at the board. As she mentioned, my name is Palak, and I'm the Innovations Director for the country for the National Domestic Workers Alliance. I think my colleague Irene from the New York chapter was here earlier, so I'm hoping that I'm not going to be covering any redundant or overlapping content. As you know, we're the national voice for the nation's domestic workers, the 3 million or so, mostly women who work in the privacy of our homes. They do the work that we say makes all other work possible, and it's kind of invisible scaffolding is the way that I think about it underneath the economy. If domestic workers don't go to work, other people are not going to be able to go to work, especially somebody like me who has my baby at home right now. So we're really excited to talk to you and demo for you a sneak preview of a product that's going nationwide next week. I was doing press calls all week as we transition from beta to nationwide, and I think several folks from the city and various parts of the city were at our, we had a private friends and family launch in late October. And excited to kind of repeat some of that here and just give you a sense of what we're up to. Before we jump right in though, I wanted to do just a couple of kind of context setting slides and how we kind of get to the issue and the solution of portable benefits for our workforce. And I'm hoping we can pull up my slides. So I'll get started, but so basically, you know, as a social movement, we kind of have a 360-degree surround sound type strategy for essentially one main goal, and that is to improve the future of the domestic work industry. I think as folks here probably got a briefing from Irene before around, it's you know, a personal home care and kind of a couple of job categories that are within domestic work are among the fastest growing occupations in the country, and this set of services and these types of jobs can't be outsourced and they can't be automated just quite yet. I have this contact in California who has been working in a lab in the UC system to figure out how a robot can fold a towel for 11 years. So I don't think as the baby boomers age and as the care crisis is upon us that the robots will be here just yet. But we don't, I mean, our alliance does not have a fear of technology, and we do not, you know, I personally am a techno-optimist, but I do have concerns about the way things are developing, which I'll share with you in a second, which leads us to the innovation arm that I run for the Alliance, which is building our own technology in service of improving the future of work for domestic workers, but I also think for many other low-wage workers across the economy, as an example. The one thing that I will say, you know, so we have lots of strategies, we won't go into them here, we're here to show you the demo, one of our strategies, but we changed laws, we're very proud to have New York been the first place in the country that passed the first Domestic Worker Bill of Rights. We launched a C4 earlier this year and endorsed our first candidate, Stacey Abrams in Georgia. We, you know, we have our innovation lab, we have trainings, we have all kinds of strategies because we know that it's going to take, it's a very complicated and entrenched set of conditions in the industry, and in order for us to change that, we're going to have lots of different tools. So I just kind of, you know, want you to situate the fact that we've produced Alia and our innovations arm within a multiplicity of strategies that our movement is using. Next slide, please. So just by, in terms of the conditions for why we need the portable benefits platform in the first place, I think you all know that domestic work in this country has been one of the most invisible, informal, underground, cash-based, in the shadows parts of the economy. It is, as I think I'm sure Irene has told you in the last time, been excluded from basically every labor law protection in the country. The right to unionize, when the kind of all those foundational labor laws were passed in this country, essentially a political deal was struck in Congress, and that was in order to bring the Southern legislators on board. They did not want the domestic workers and the agricultural workers of the country, the farm workers, to be included in all of those protections. And the reason for that was essentially a legacy of slavery and racism in this country. And so that has resulted in domestic work over the last 75 to 80 years being really one of the most unprotected and vulnerable workforces in the country. And because of the demographics of this country, the demand for these services are growing. And so, you know, part of what we see as the future jobs in this country and our mission as a movement is to figure out how we transform these jobs from what are often poverty jobs or vulnerable jobs into good jobs. That's kind of like the mission of what we are up to, and we have a lot of strategies, organizing legislation, like what I said before, to kind of get there. But I think it's really important to understand that these are the conditions that we're coming from. Unregulated, what we often say is, I call it like a Wild West market. Anything goes. You know, you could have like a really kind employer who's really interested in you know, have a multi-generational relationship, and then on the other end of the spectrum, you have human trafficking, people whose passports are like taken and they're locked in their, you know, that kind of stuff, and then everything in between is what we've seen. So, but these are the conditions that we're coming from. This is what informs the market that we're operating in. Previous slide. So what this means is that domestic workers are often working without any of the same basic protections that we all take for granted. They don't show up for work and have an HR department. They don't have benefits. They don't have stability. They don't have protections under the law. There's a whole bunch of things. Now, of course, our movement is working to end those exclusions and change the laws, and there's lots of things that we're doing to do that and put basic floors into markets, right? Where it's kind of just been a anything goes type of this type market. We are working to do all of those things. And part of, I think, why there's been such a a wonderful way in which the national conversation around the future of work has taken off. In some ways, you can think about the conditions that domestic workers have been in for generations as almost like a canary in the coal mine. If we can go to the next slide, that around kind of what many other people, the kinds of anxiety and I don't know, instability that people are beginning to fear about the economy, and the discussions around the prevalence of the gig economy and what it means for the American workforce. Some of that you can see, you can kind of look to the domestic workforce as a canary in the coal mine for what could happen or what could come if we don't actually have a plan on what we want to do. A couple of things about technology before we kind of launch into the demo of our tech and the way that we built it. Oh, can you go back, please? Go back? Yes, I'll let you know. Sorry. It's okay. So one is, so technology, you know, if you think about that slide where it was like, these markets are really underground and invisible, have been atomized. In some ways, it's almost like free market conditions. You've got like individuals going and negotiating their own employment relationships with individual households. You know, it's just kind of been a referral market, right? Mostly the way that people hire and get hired in this market is you ask your friends, you ask somebody that you know, oh, do you have somebody that cleans your house, like that kind of thing. What's happened, I think, in the last 5 years, and this is really what I came onto the Alliance to do, was to develop an entire strategy to respond and orient the national social movement around how the industry is changing, especially, and technology is playing a big role in that, right? So what do I mean by how is technology changing the domestic market? One is the way in which all of our lives are changing. It's like the prevalence of mobile, like we're on our screens all the time, the way that we're expected to be working, the way that we expect to be communicating with our bosses and our employers. The same is true for domestic workers, right? The phone is really the way in which people communicate with their employers, and domestic workers in particular, that's true, especially given the responsibilities that they have with children or seniors. The second big thing, though, around technology is the entrance of Silicon Valley and technology firms into the previously undiscovered markets of domestic work. And so what that has resulted in is an infusion of venture capital and other forms and the emergence of firms in an industry where we never really had firms and corporations before in any real substantive way. Of course, we had small agencies and the Medicaid market, just put the Medicaid market aside because of its formalized nature and relationship to the government. But the other parts of the market is really what we're talking about, the private pay, the invisible, where people make their own arrangements and pay out of pocket, right? And so what has happened is we've got these large forces now entering into the markets, and it's resulted in all kinds of different models, some of which are fairly benign, some of which have been actually pretty harmful to the workforce. But a lot of it is still being written and unfolding, as we speak. It's like some of these companies haven't been around for more than a few years, right? So there's a lot that's changing. But one of the things that is a real big structural change in the industry that's happening is that technology, especially technology firms, are aggregating the market in ways that we've never seen before, at a scale and pace we've never seen before. So whereas you had atomized workers, right, like just kind of finding their own jobs, you've got tremendous amount of aggregation of supply and demand in these technology platforms, right? And some of them were like mentioned earlier in terms of where gig workers are going to find work and all that kind of stuff. So is this good? Is this bad? Sometimes, so far, some of it's really, really bad, and we can talk about that in the Q&A if that's where people want to go. Some of it is actually really good. It's like smoothing the way that supply and demand meet in the labor markets. And I would say a large part of it is like TBD. It really depends on how things unfold. My personal assessment, having been doing this and being engaged in Silicon Valley and with the technology companies for over 5 years now, day in and day out around the future of care and the future of domestic work as a proxy for the way that the labor markets go, I am concerned. I'm really concerned because there's a lot of structural changes that are happening, laws that are being passed to actually essentially take away all of the work that we have done to create rights for domestic workers in the offline part of the economy. And then as the industry shifts online, there's laws that are being passed all around the country right now that take those rights away, that say, anybody who works online is an independent contractor and therefore unprotected, going back into the Wild West type environment for domestic workers. We can talk more about that, but I want to give you that context, right? And lastly, around the labor market functioning, before we kind of go into the demo, is that one of the biggest concerns that I have right now is the privatization of the labor market. So what I see happening is we've moved from like free market conditions, you know, like atomized free market type conditions in domestic work, to a third-party intermediary that actually controls the way that the labor market functions. Lots of them. Now, none of them have enough scale or control over the labor markets for like what economists call monopoly power to emerge and accrue to those problems. But I do think it's something for those of us who are really concerned about all stakeholders in the economy and as we shape the future work to pay attention to that dynamic, especially in domestic work, because we're going from completely disaggregated conditions to very quick aggregation under the control where like a social movement like ours, for example, doesn't own or have an ability to influence that technology. They're not public goods, it's not a public space, it's a privatized space where labor then is essentially looking for work. Okay. This could be like a whole 3-day thing of rant that I have, but I will not do that to you, sorry. So let's move on. I just want to give you that context. Like, we're thinking pretty holistically about the industry and the role of technology, which then leads us to our solution around affordable benefits. So obviously, we're the National Domestic Workers Alliance, we're doing good work. But I will just make a couple of quick assessments of what we've noticed and why we've maybe chosen to make the interventions that we're making. One is that there's kind of, I call it a future work frenzy. I have been on literally every roundtable around the country about this. And Chris, tell me how we're doing on time. When do we need to wrap up?
About 20, 25 minutes.
Okay, great. So, so I've been on like that circuit of the future of work all around the country. And these are kind of some of the things that I have taken away after being out there on this, representing low-wage women of color in the economy and the discussions about where the economy is going and the role of technology and all of that. The first is the future of work has not really centered workers. This is just, I'm just going to give you my like top lines, and we can go where you guys want to go afterwards in the Q&A. But the discussions is not about it, the technology is not centering it, right? So a lot of the technology, the commercial technology that we're seeing emerge is serving the demand side of the market. It's definitely serving investors. But the workers and the supply side has not really been served, I think, and we've not really optimized all the gains and the cool stuff that technology can do has not really been applied to that side of the labor market. I think a lot of the policy solutions that we're beginning to see across the country are being driven by companies. Doesn't necessarily mean it's good or bad, but there hasn't been enough, I think, engagement from the worker side around the future of work type initiatives that we're beginning to see emerge. We're obviously playing a big role in that, and we'll continue to play a big role in that. One thing that's really struck me as I've been in all these conversations, and I'm not typically in this, I'm an entrepreneur and we've been building a lot of stuff in our lab, but because of my leadership role, I end up being in a lot of these conversations, and what I have been struck by is what I kind of characterize as an overemphasis on upgrading the worker instead of upgrading the jobs. So there's a lot of discussion around people need this and this kind of input and this kind of upgrading, and that's all true, and like it's you know, stuff is changing and people need to adapt, and I think that's true, but there seems to be less of an emphasis, at least from my point of view, not speaking about the labor movement, but just generally out there around how is it that we're upgrading the jobs instead of moving people out of so-called bad jobs into good jobs, because our jobs are here to stay, so we should probably figure out how to improve them. And then the last point that I will make is that sometimes, you know, the future of work conversation is about something way in the future, and I sometimes am like, well, the future of work is actually really related to the present of work, and we haven't really had a way to bridge that. And so we're talking about autonomous vehicles or just transitions and that kind of stuff, but there's a lot of things in the next 5 to 10 years that we probably want to invest in if we want to see, you know, an outcome 25, 30 years down the line. The two are really connected, and I've not yet seen that really be theorized to a level of precision. Anyway, So all of this context leads us to build our own innovation arm. I've been hacking away at this for like 5 years. We've had a lot of failures, a lot of MVPs, a lot of prototypes, and we're really, really happy that Alia has emerged as our flagship product from our innovation lab. And I'm going to play a quick video to introduce you to the concept, and then I'm going to do a demo for you. Sorry. Pardon. Okay.
Llevo 10 años limpiando casas. Estoy muy orgullosa de lo que soy. La parte más difícil antes de tener beneficios era que yo tengo hijos chiquitos que dependen de mí.
The National Domestic Workers Alliance is the voice and a home for the millions of women who work in our homes every day. This work is some of the most important work in the economy. We call it the work that makes all of their work possible, because it makes it possible for millions of families to go out and do what they do every day.
She is such an invaluable part of our home and the way we function. It's like we're working side by side. She's cleaning my home, I'm doing other housework.
A lot of employers want to do the right thing by the people who take care of them and don't know how to do it.
To me, anybody who works in my home, they're no different than I am, but it's overwhelming to even begin to figure out how to provide benefits.
Alia is our solution to benefits for domestic workers. Alia was created by the domestic worker movement for the domestic worker movement because their conditions are particularly difficult to design benefits for.
Uno de mis clientes me refirió a Alia. Mis otros clientes, yo los invité con el flyer que Alia me dio. Yo tengo 15 clientes. De los 15 clientes, como 9 clientes yo tengo registrados en Alia.
When she came to me and told me about Alia, I looked into it and it was so easy that I was happy to sign up.
Alia allows for many clients to contribute to a single worker's benefits. We designed Alia to be attached to the worker and not the employer. So the benefits are portable and can move with the worker from job to job.
Cuando los clientes me registran al programa de Alia, yo me siento muy contenta porque me tienen aprecio como persona, no como empleada. Que es muy importante porque, ok, yo me enfermo y yo digo a Alia, le llamo a Alia y le digo, necesito el día de enfermedad, entonces ellos me mandan pagan el día. El seguro de vida es muy importante porque por lo menos nos cubre una cantidad que si algo me llegara a pasar, ese dinero le va a ser de mucha utilidad a mis hijas.
Today, when we look around, the conditions that define domestic work, like lack of access to a safety net, lack of control over hours, lack of job security, increasingly those conditions have come to define work for more and more Americans. Technology has been amazing at helping us solve for convenience and efficiency. It's now time for technology to help us solve for economic security and opportunity. If we can provide access to benefits for domestic workers, we can do it for all workers.
Okay, so let's jump into. Okay, so as I said, Alia is a portable benefits platform, and I'm going to talk to you about the mechanics of it and show you what it actually looks like. But I want to tell you a little bit how this came about, right? So basically, I mean, we're obviously a movement, national movement of domestic workers around the country, and time again, we've heard from domestic workers about the various conditions that they would love to address. And one of them in particular is around the lack of benefits and the kinds of things that come with a traditional job, right? And so That's what we're hearing from the workers. With cleaners in particular, you know, they've got a roster of 10 or 15 people or homes that they're cleaning. If they don't show up for work one day, that basically is just lost income. There is no mechanism to take a paid sick day. There's no mechanism to facilitate against that loss of income or any kind of volatility that might happen if an employer decides to go to Turks and Caicos for the week, you know. So that's kind of on the worker side. On the employer side, what was really fascinating and interesting was that, you know, the domestic work relationship has a level of intimacy. Because people are in your home, especially those who have long recurring relationships. There's a kind of both informality and a level of intimacy that is in the relationship. And so what we heard from employers is that they really did care about the workers and the people who are working in their home. But that it was really hard to figure out how to do anything about some of these concerns. Like, was just complicated. Like, how do you research it? How do you do your share? Like, you know that the person's only coming 3 hours every 2 weeks. Like, how do you do your part and not, it's not like 0 or 1. Either you're doing it all or you're doing nothing, right? And so that's kind of where, that's kind of like what we started to hear in the early discovery processes when we were talking to all of the different stakeholders and building a platform. And of course, domestic work is not the only type of workforce that's working without benefits, right? I mean, there's millions of people across the economy and you know, and more that are kind of going into cobbling together income and, you know, piecing together work, where the kind of the traditional scaffolding that we've built in the economy is not available to more and more people in the economy. Next slide, please. So the key problem that we're seeking to solve with this platform is when someone, like domestic workers to start, have multiple people and they work for multiple clients or customers, how do we facilitate the same kinds of protections as if you worked for one employer? That's the problem that we're looking to solve. So this is our solution. We've designed the system basically, and we're starting with the first use case of cleaners, and even within domestic work, very targeted focus. And the reason for that is cleaners have many clients, right? So we can kind of test the concept here with them. But the way that the platform, the Alia platform works is you've got multiple employers who are contributing basically a small amount per cleaning or per job. That's the frame that we've developed for cleaning. It might be different for nannies or anybody else in the economy. But for the cleaning sector, this is how we've framed it. And all of that goes into a single account for the worker. Next slide. So it's portable, right? That all of that money, like if it stays with the worker in her account, even if she stops working for this employer. That employer may not pay into it anymore, but a different employer might pay into it. But it doesn't stay with the job, it stays with the worker. Second, it allows for prorated contribution. So if somebody works for you every day, you might want to contribute more. If somebody works for you every 2 weeks or just once a month, you can kind of, as an employer or a client, you can prorate your contributions. And lastly, what we built is a platform, right? So we didn't build just one product around a disability insurance or an income value, but we actually are building the technological scaffolding to be able to offer multiple kinds of products and lots of different features in the future around servicing a pretty unserved workforce, at least by commercial markets. Okay, so let's jump in to the product and let me show you what the experience is like. So we're pulling up, no worries, our staging platform. So let's just go to the home page where you would land. So you could actually land on this home page right now on your phones. You wouldn't be able to see the product yet because the velvet rope, so to speak, is being lifted on Tuesday. Okay, so when you land on the My Alia homepage, and then are you all set with the next one? Okay.
Obviously, the internet's just taking its time.
Yeah. Okay. So should we just jump right into the product then?
Sure.
Is that already pulled up?
It's not out yet, right?
Okay.
Just the internet's taking its time.
Sorry, we're having technical difficulties. Yeah. So while we're waiting for that stuff to pull up and we'll show you the product and the experience, are there questions that I can start answering now?
How do you expect people who are going to go to the table to participate in it? Because I see that as a big problem, right, with domestic workers, and this is basically identifying who is paying their taxes and properly, I guess, compensating these people and who wouldn't be. So how do you expect to?
So great question, and actually one that we've solved for. So this platform actually does not have any kind of wage or income information. What we have, so part of the innovation of this, there's a technological innovation and kind of facilitating all the multiple contributions, and that's a big deal. It's the first portable benefits platform in the country, for sure. But the other part of it is the legal innovations that we've had, which is really what you're doing on this site is purchasing credits. Like you might purchase, a gift card on Amazon or on iTunes or whatever. You're purchasing credits on our site, and those credits, like the domestic worker can apply those credits to an a la carte menu of benefits, which we'll show you, right? So there's actually we have no income and reporting requirements. Those credits are not counted as wages or income. So there's actually no employment relationship data or validation that the platform is creating. It took us a long time to get to the other side of it, and it is a concern. Like we get in these kinds of settings, we get those concerns. But to be honest, from the actual product being out in the market, like we've not heard a ton of that type of stuff from our users yet. But I have a slide on this that I can kind of get into that. But while we're pulling everything up, happy to take questions.
So does that mean that Social Security and unemployment insurance systems are typically not part of the menu the worker is selecting?
No, because they don't have that kind of a relationship, right? So if a household is employing somebody on the books formally as a W-2 employee, they would then have a payroll, like you would get all the things that you would get when you have a pay stub, but none of that is really the reality of the way that independent workers are working.
You can't buy into Social Security either.
Yeah.
Right?
So part of what we're doing here is mimicking the kinds of products and services that you get in a formal social safety net and make them available outside of the traditional system. Okay, so this is where you would land, right, on our website, and then say you were acquired, you got a text from me, and you heard about this great presentation at 8:30 in the morning, and you decided you wanted to sign up, so you'd click on Get Started, and then it would take you to, basically, you kind of have to put your name and your email, pretty easy, and then you'd be into the product. And what you would see, so this is like, let's just do the first side of the platform from the client perspective. You hire a cleaner and you want to sign them up for Alia. You would basically go to add a new cleaner. And what we know about the way that this market functions and the relationships is basically people know each other by text. They text each other and phone number, right? So you can basically search the system for your cleaner's phone number. And we're going to first put in a number that we know is not in the system, right? So maybe your cleaner hasn't signed up. What you would get basically is an automatic feature to invite your cleaner. You could choose whether the message was in English or Spanish based on the cleaner's preferred language. And you would basically send an invitation from our system to the cleaner to inform them about the Alia platform. They would also get a follow-up phone because we're organizers and because we know how to build movements and all of that kind of stuff. We're leaning on the strength of the social movement. We've got a pretty robust process on the customer service side for the workers where somebody would reach out to them and talk to them about the program and all of that. Now let's go in and put in a number of a cleaner we know is in the system, someone's already registered. And so we see, okay, Justina, she's here, and we're going to add her as a client. I want to add her to I want to make a contribution to her benefits fund. So you basically would find her, you would basically choose add your contribution, and the way that we've structured it, at least for the cleaning industry or the cleaning part of the market, is we have suggested guidelines, $5 a cleaning. So if they come, a couple times, maybe it's $10 a month. But this is all policy choices of the platform. There isn't anything set in stone about this. I think we'll continue to optimize this. What we've seen so far in beta is that many employers actually make much larger contributions than $5 a job. Okay, so you just add it, you put your credit card in, and that's pretty much it. It's a recurring contribution. You don't have to log in every time and make a contribution as an employer. You kind of set it at a level that you want it to be, and then you forget about it, and you kind of move on with your life. And what we've heard from clients is they really appreciate that ease of use, where it's like 3 steps, you're done, you kind of move on with your life. You know you're contributing to one of the main benefits that workers want is paid time off. Now let's log in and see, like, if you're Christina and you're the cleaner, what do you see when you log into the system? So you would log in. Yeah, it's slow internet, it's okay. So you'd log in, and basically what you would see is a dashboard where it would say the number of dollars that have accrued into that worker's account, and you would see the number of clients that are contributing, right? So like she, you're getting it, right? Yeah, okay. So it might say like, oh, 100 credits have accrued for this worker. That's what she has as her available balance to be applied to the different benefits options that she has. And maybe 3 customers are contributing on a regular basis, right? So hopefully we can get in and we can show it to you. We built the platform on the front end in English and Spanish. So for the worker, like, she can choose right now whether English or Spanish actually works for her, because so much of what we've learned is that the commercial and kind of technology that's being built is built in English. You could, so that's where you would toggle between English and Spanish. This Christina, she has $1,293 that have accrued in her account. She's got 12 active clients who've been contributing. What she can do then is go into the clients tab and see which one of her clients are contributing and at what level. So it's going to take a second, I think, for the internet to catch up to what I'm doing, what I'm saying. But she can run down the list here and see who's contributing and at what level. She can also invite a client. So if she's got a new client, or if she's talked to, maybe one of her other clients, because it's a referral-based industry, employers talk to each other and will say, oh, I signed up for this thing. She can actually search. She can search to see if a client's already paying a different cleaner in the system, or she can actually send an invite herself. And then for the benefits piece of it, this is where, when the worker can actually manage the benefits that she's enrolled in. So what we saw was she had a certain number of dollars in credits, right? So those dollars are accrued in her platform. And what that means is she's got 5 days, she's got up to 5 days available for paid time off. Now, that's also a policy decision that we made in consultation with the workers around the country on how you evaluate a day off. It's a number we've chosen, $120 a day is kind of where across the country, workers felt was a reasonable and helpful amount to evaluate at a day. So basically the domestic worker would, if she wanted to take a paid day off, she would basically go up to this tab and request a day. This is also where she can see which insurance products that we are offering. I'll talk to you about the products that we have right now, which of those she's enrolled in, and what her policy number is, and just kind of that kind of stuff. So it's pretty, this is basically where the worker can exercise and use the credits that have accrued into the things that she needs. I think a couple of key differences around the way that the benefits packages work here. One is it's all a la carte. So the domestic worker gets to choose for herself. She's not getting a package of things, half of which she doesn't need or want. She gets to choose how she wants to deploy the credits that have been contributed to her account. All right, so let's pop out of this and go back to the slides.
And what kind of benefits could they enroll in?
That's my next slide.
Okay. Good.
Yeah, I got you. I got you. Okay. So right now we've got paid time off, and then there are 4 insurance products that we're offering: disability insurance, accident insurance, critical illness insurance, and life insurance. So these are the benefits that we have to start. We absolutely would love to get to health, some kind of health benefits, obviously. Not an easy product to start with, so paid time off was by far the thing that the domestic workers wanted the most. So we figured out how to do that with the credit system, and how you request the days and all of that, the mechanics of actually getting folks the money. And I think retirement is a huge concern in this industry as well. So those are kind of areas that we need to do work on. But this is where we are, and this is what we started with nationwide. And then the top questions we get, I think we kind of hit on one of them, right? So one is, who can use Alia? Like, the answer is anyone can use Alia. All you need is a name and a phone number to sign up, and all you need is an address to receive your paid time off money. We disperse that money in the form of a Visa gift card. So when you click, I want 2 days off, and it's like valued at $120 to $240, you will get a $240 gift card in the mail. So you don't need a bank account, you don't need to be banked. There's a bunch of barriers that we've kind of solved for in terms of who makes up this population in the industry. And then what's the deal with taxes? We already talked about that, but if there are more questions, I'm happy to answer that. Go ahead.
Can you repeat? I missed it. You said the deal with taxes.
Oh, the deal with taxes. There is no deal with taxes. We just started. There is no deal with taxes because what we designed, and this is, I mean, Alex Ford is our counsel as well, a legal genius in my opinion. Hacked away at this for like 8 months in terms of how do you create a system that threads all these needles. So this system of credits that an employer, when they're making a contribution, they're actually purchasing credits. Legally, they're purchasing credits on a site, putting credits into the cart, and then purchasing those credits. And those credits accrue to the domestic worker. It's just one-to-one. $1 equals 1 credit. And then the domestic worker can apply those credits to all the menu of options that she has. She can purchase a paid day off. She can purchase critical illness insurance. And because, I mean, it kind of like mimics what benefits are, but they're actually not tied to wages or income.
So it's not income.
So you're saying it's not income?
Correct.
So I have a question. Well, I actually have 2 questions.
I'm so glad I have a lawyer here. It's not income.
So the first question is, how do you handle fraud prevention on the platform? You know, obviously, if you're not doing identity verification or it's not attached to bank accounts, this can be used for more than just paying domestic workers. So one is like, what is your fraud prevention strategy? It's amazing also, by the way, I think it's very important and it's very innovative. It's great to see a nonprofit come up with something like this. And you inspire us all. Fraud prevention.
And don't go to jail.
Yeah. I like the second question is about the sustainability for the platform. I see that Google.org is one of your investors. So what's your revenue model? If people are allocating a certain number of credits and you give people the exact number of credits they're getting, how's the program going to be? I mean, are you going to sell ads? Are you going to, like, what does that look like?
Excellent question. On the first question, fraud. Can you just say a little bit more about which, I mean, there's lots of fraud concerns, which part of that are you talking about?
Let's say you have someone who's a drug dealer and they want to pay the people that work for them, and so they have them set up accounts here and they have them get allocations through the platform and they get Visa gift cards, instead of giving them money. So just something like that, like you're not checking the identity of who's giving the money, who's receiving the money.
I'm turning it over to counsel! Turning it over to counsel! Thank you for coming up with the worst case scenario.
And we have thought of the worst case scenario.
Right, no,
I'm like an entrepreneur, but let's just build it.
I'm going to go back and talk about this, and I'm going to be asked
totally.
this question. This is something we should think about.
This is great. I think one of the biggest problems right now, what's great, right, is that we're dealing in such small numbers.
Okay.
So we would see pretty quickly, as you saw, most of our contributions are like $5, $10 per contributing client. If all of a sudden we saw somebody who wanted to contribute $1,000, well, that's wonderful. Let's find out a little bit more about this person. So I think that right off the bat puts us in a place where fraud kind of is going to be flagged by virtue of how people will be using it. The average, I think, we hope with an average cleaner receiving, if you have 10 clients and you're looking at a few $100s, you're talking up to like $2,000 over the year. You're not talking about what would give rise to huge problems when you're thinking about like fraud and money laundering issues.
Thank you.
Speaking of money laundering, this whole thing took us like 8 months of Alex figuring out how we would not be a money launderer. So there was a bunch of laws around that we had to clear as well. The second question is a really good question. So, we're a social movement producing a social enterprise. So in the first instance of this, we're seeking to basically figure out, could we make a system of benefits work for an underserved group of people? We are funded by philanthropy. Google.org is one of our investors. But I think The 18-month plan right now is to get to some level of monetization and self-financing on the platform. And the obvious mechanisms are going to be some kind of a transaction fee or something that gets built into the fact that we're already taking recurring credit card payments. And so everybody that's already participating in the platform is giving us a credit card, right? So I think the question is, how do we optimize that? How do we not turn off clients? How do we stay true to, like, those are the kinds of things over the next 18 months that we, we're going to just basically optimize and have to figure out. I mean, the plan is to get to self-financing in order to be able to grow and sustainably, have it. So that's in the plan, but not the, I think this is kind of where you have a really interesting run ramp in social enterprise and an organization like ours producing a technology product where we don't have that pressure on the first instance, so that we can optimize for a mission and then get to monetization, which is really different.
Could I ask, how could we as a board help?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. Okay. I got a slide on this too. Okay. So, yeah, so I mean, I think I think there's basically three categories right now in a partnership with the city, whether it's the board or some larger set of forces. I think you can be an investor in the platform. I think we're going to need that if we really want to grow and we want to have like tailored services to New York domestic workers and New York clients. It will be really helpful and important for you to be a validator, right? That this is like where it's like a new system, it's like supported by city government and workforce and all of that. And then lastly, to the extent that you have the relationships or capacity to bring users onto the platform, I mean, our goal for the next 18 months is growth, growth, growth. We need users on both sides of the platform. Depends on the kinds of, like, I don't know whether that's something that happens, through the relationships that you all have. But some combination of those three, and whether that investment takes its, a form of training around how to get onto the system, like we're happy to be creative in that, but those are our needs. And we've played around with the idea of matching incentive dollars to kind of catalyze early adoption of the system. I wrote down Link NYC from the earlier presentation. I'm like, that'd be really cool if we could have like a whole, benefits are for everyone. If you work, you deserve benefits campaign, moving across the city. There's lots of ways. I mean, I think it's kind of, what are the levers and tools that you have to help us meet those three objectives of investment, validation, and growth, user growth.
Are you rolling this out nationally, or are you focusing on specific markets to start?
It's moving out nationally on December 11th. That is what I have told the press this week, so.
But
it's happening.
Was there a test market? Have you tested?
Yes, we've been in beta for about a year. We've been in beta for about a year. We've got users, a meaningful number of users on both sides of the platform. That's kind of how we got to where we are right now. And then the next, I think, then we want to just make it available because like the Alliance is really excited about it. Governments are excited about it. Companies are approaching us. So, I think.
And New York City was target market, right?
Yeah.
Market.
Yeah.
Can you talk about your healthcare, what you found out so far, what's available, any chance of even catastrophic support, or what do you know?
Well, the critical illness insurance product is that kind of catastrophic type insurance product. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have obviously like traditional healthcare, but we've tried to put together a few of those individual products that can kind of supplement. So with critical illness insurance, with disability insurance, and with accident insurance, we think that we're offering some of those options.
Yeah, but one of the interesting things.
Who's paying for it? Is there a fund? Who's paying for it? How do you get it to them?
They're commercially available.
When you join Alia, do you automatically have this as availability or what?
So what happens is basically these are 4 products that what's the vendor? Colonial Life. They're Colonial Life products for now. So we're not self-insured, we don't have our own fund. Maybe with scale we could get to something different, but this is kind of where we are in the early startup phase. And you would be able to choose whether you wanted to sign up for those products or whether you just wanted your money to accrue to time off. As the worker, you get to choose.
And then
now, in terms of health insurance, this is one of the conversations where I think the city could be really helpful. Is there's all kinds of services that exist across the city, and it would be really cool to have the Alia platform serve as a liaison to some of those services. So if insurance premiums are too high for like a low-wage population like this, or they're cut out of the market for whatever reason, maybe it's immigration status or whatnot, like they're not able to access certain parts of the health insurance market, could we figure out how to get health access to folks, right? And so you could have like a geographic strategy, like we pick New York City as an example, for example, to like curate all the kind of stuff that is available and make it available as a one-stop, shop for domestic workers, or the stuff that is already there, but either they're unaware of or not enrolled in.
Have you discovered a way that people can put X dollars away to some kind of pension, some kind of safety net? And do you have somebody who would manage that for you, or the bank?
Not yet, but if you could help us with that, we would.
I'd like to talk to you about it.
I would love to talk to you about that, because I think there's a lot to learn from the union pension fund system and how we might be able to create a similar type of product for this workforce. So, it's the biggest concern after paid time off. It's like, what am I going to do?
Just have them contribute to some pre-tax or a tax-exempt fund? What, 401k, the equivalent of a 401k or something?
Yes, I think we would be able to offer that to some parts of the market. Our ethos is to leave nobody behind, and so often those kinds of products require social security numbers, and they require a certain, set of documents that not everybody who's working, the most vulnerable people in this industry don't have.
So I'm going to play devil's advocate, although I can't do it half as easy. But I mean, how long?
Wait, this is like a friendly audience, right?
but how long before a municipality's Department of Finance says, hey, these guys are, doing something, there should be income out there should be taxes collected instead of revenue. How long before they come knocking on your door and say, we'd like to know more about what you're doing and who you're servicing?
I think that's a real concern, yeah.
Is that universally a bad thing? I mean, like, I obviously...
No, but it just may blow the whole thing up. That's really what I'm thinking.
Well, I guess I mean, because, like, isn't one of the problems with enforcing any sort of, like, worker protections that it's not centralized, so we don't know. Like, to a certain extent, I'm like, great, go get law.
Yeah, but it would be a disincentive to participate, I would think.
I think that a lot of times the U.S. is really, behind the times on stuff like this. But there is some innovative stuff like this happening, I know, in Africa and in Asia. And I think it's phenomenal that you're bringing this here. So in addition to how we can help, we should probably have some offline conversations with some of the members about things you should consider.
We would love that.
As well.
I would love to have even a small advising session with folks who are interested, and we dive deep into some of this troubleshooting. I mean, I think we're trying to get on the front end of that municipalities thing and like create a partnership with New York City, so we're kind of in it together. But let's see how that unfolds. I think, it's new. It's the first portable benefits platform in the country, so we're probably going to have some hiccups and stuff to work through, but as a concept, I think this is really going to service an entire part of the economy of workers that just don't have anything underneath them.
We're gonna have one more question because we are.
There's people behind you that are raising their hands, so just letting you know.
And
I'm coming from Department for the Aging. So let's say if I'm a house cleaner, the money that I accrue in my account, is it technically my money already? Can I withdraw it at any time? Let's say if I quit the business.
Yeah.
No.
Sorry.
No. You can purchase products with the credits that are in your account. So you would have to...
What if I'm quitting the business, being a house cleaner? I don't want to do it anymore. How do I withdraw the money?
Well, you don't withdraw, you have to purchase paid days off or apply that credit to the set of products that we have.
If you cancel your account, which is kind of what you're saying, you're going to go do something else, then you can request, it wouldn't be the requirement that it's $120, which is a paid day off. You could take the rest of those credits, but that's the only way that you can get them.
Okay, yeah. Thanks.
So in effect.
Do you want to ask your last question and then?
Yeah, I have two questions. Okay, so one was if can the worker contribute if they're not making enough money to maintain an insurance thing? And then my other question was, are there any of these platforms that are doing anything similar, and or have you guys talked about partnering with any of them?
Great questions. So on the first question, At this point, we don't have the mechanism for workers to contribute. It's not a technological barrier. I think in the first instance of the product, what we're trying to do is create a level of cultural change around norms for domestic work and say that this work is like all other work in the economy. And so we want like this kind of social contract that we have in the economy that employers are contributing to benefits. We'd like for that to kind of get out there first instead of workers paying for their own benefits. Probably at one point that will be introduced if you wanted to close the gap on a premium, for example, or you didn't want to lose your coverage because you were taking 2 months off. Like we'll probably have to solve for that, but I think in the larger vision, what we're trying to do is also change norms around the industry. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I thought I'm used to facilitating. My bad.
Is that right?
Yeah, really quick, one last question and that's it. Yep.
In regards to that, because you mentioned in terms of the corporatization of the process, so these intermediaries that are developing in the space that are ultimately kind of controlling the way domestic work works and happens. So is the goal to create more partnerships with organizations like those, or TaskRabbits or otherwise, that would theoretically, or those organizations that are essentially accelerating this particular issue, right? That are, providing opportunity for people to work, but not protecting individuals.
Maybe. It really kind of depends on the player. Depends on whether they're like trying to skirt laws or whether they're actually trying to create good work. Like it really depends. Stuff would have to just go through our worker council, and the workers would have to tell us whether they want us to essentially validate a partner or a player with our brand and our movement, saying yes, this is good work and you can get benefits through it, or say actually don't work in this environment because it's actually going to affect and decline the future of this industry and the quality of jobs. So it would have to go through a process for us, but I don't have a dogmatic answer on it. I mean, ultimately, I think what our goal is every domestic worker and all excluded workers have access to benefits and social security, wherever they work.
Wonderful. I really want to thank you for coming and presenting. Okay, we've gone a little over, so I think we'll conclude today. And before we adjourn, I want to wish you all a very happy new year, and we'll see you back in March. Do I have a motion to adjourn today's board? Second? All in favor? All right, we're adjourned. Thank you.